Checkout is the one Shopify surface where you cannot inject a script tag, cannot edit a template, and cannot touch the page directly. The only way in is a Checkout UI extension, running sandboxed, speaking to Checkout through a typed API. Last episode covered how that platform works. Today we build a real extension on it, a pre-purchase product offer, the classic you might also like upsell using the exact scaffold command, the exact configuration file, and the exact component code from Shopify's own current developer tutorial. Welcome back to Shopify Development Deep Dive. The build today is Shopify's own flagship Checkout UI extension tutorial, a pre-purchase product offer. It queries the Storefront API for products, filters out anything already in the cart, renders an offer with Checkout's own components, and adds the product to the order when the customer clicks add. Every file you'll see is the real one from that tutorial, fetched today. One constraint up front, straight from Shopify's own callout: Checkout UI extensions render only on Shopify Plus stores, so that's the audience this ships to. Here's the plan, end to end. A Checkout UI extension, scaffolded by the real Shopify CLI Checkout_UI template. A TOML configuration that wires one module file to the purchase.checkout.block.render target. The flexible target merchants position themselves in the checkout editor. The API_access capability, which is what lets the extension call the Storefront API directly from inside Checkout, no backend round trip needed. A Preact component that reads the cart's line items and mutates them through applyCartLinesChange. And at the end, a local preview against a real development store checkout, followed by a version deploy. 5 stages. First, Scaffold, one CLI command with the Checkout UI template generates the whole extension directory. Second, targeting, the TOML file maps your component file to a render target, deciding where in Checkout it can appear. Third, querying, the API access capability unlocks direct Storefront API calls, which is how the component finds products to offer. Fourth, mutation, applyCartLinesChange is the typed, sanctioned way to add a line item to someone's cart. There is no direct cart object to poke at. And fifth, preview and deploy, Shopify app dev renders it against a real dev store checkout while you work, and Shopify app deploy snapshots everything into a released app version. The requirements list, straight from the tutorial. A user account with app development permissions. A development store ideally created with Shopify's generated test data, so there are real products for the offer to find. An app scaffold with Shopify CLI version 385.1 or higher, which earlier episodes in this series have already set up. And one requirement that's about the destination rather than your machine: Checkout UI extensions render only for Shopify Plus merchants, so plan for that from the start rather than discovering it at launch. The real command, run from your app's root directory. Shopify app, generate extension, template set to Checkout_UI, name set to my Checkout UI extension. The CLI asks you to confirm the Checkout UI extension type, then generates starter code around it. This is the same generate extension muscle the last 4 episodes used for functions: one CLI, many templates, and the template name is the only thing that changes what you get. What the template actually generates, verbatim from the tutorial. One source file, Checkout.jsx, which is the index page of the extension. Everything renders from there. A locales folder with a default English file and a French one, because Checkout extensions get Shopify's translation plumbing for free, the same pattern Dawn's theme locales used back in part 4. The TOML file, which we'll spend the next 2 scenes in. And a package.json, because this builds like any small JavaScript package. The real configuration file from the tutorial, and every line earns its place. The API version pins which generation of the Checkout API your extension receives. The tutorial ships 2025-10. The extension block declares a name, a stable handle, and the type UI_extension. Then the targeting block does the actual wiring, this module file, rendered at this target. Purchase.checkout.block.render is the flexible target from last episode, the one that lets merchants drag the extension wherever they want in the checkout editor. Declare more targeting blocks and the same extension can render in several places at once. For more lines of the same real file, and they change what the extension is allowed to do. Capabilities are opt-in permissions. API access grants exactly one thing: the right to query the Storefront API directly from inside Checkout, which is how this extension will fetch products to offer without owning any backend at all. The boundary matters if you needed data from your own external server instead. That's a different capability, network access, with its own review bar. Ask for the narrowest thing that works. One more note from the docs: every time you edit this TOML file, restart the dev server, it isn't hot reloaded. The real top of Checkout.jsx, exactly as the current template generates it. 3 imports, the Shopify UI extensions package in its Preact flavor, which registers Checkout's web components, render from Preact itself, and the 2 hooks the component needs. Then the entire entry point is a default export that renders the extension component into document body. That's the contract. Shopify loads this module at the target you declared in the TOML, calls the default export, and your component tree takes it from there, inside a sandbox where document body is yours but the surrounding checkout page is not. The real opening of the extension component. The first line is the most important one in the file. A global object called Shopify is the entire bridge between your code and the checkout. From it, the tutorial pulls 3 things: applyCartLinesChange, the mutation function, query, the helper that executes Storefront API requests, unlocked by the capability from step 4, and I18N, the localization helper that formats prices in the shopper's own currency. Below that, plain component state, the fetched products, a loading flag, an adding flag, and an error flag. And from that same Shopify global, lines the live, reactive list of what's currently in the cart. 2 real effects, both small and both deliberate. The first runs once on mount and fetches products. The tutorial's fetch products function uses that query helper to ask the Storefront API for the store's first 5 products, then keeps them in state, and its filtering step compares them against the cart lines so the extension never offers something the customer already has. The second effect is pure user experience. When the error flag flips on, a 3-second timer flips it back off and the cleanup clears the timer. The error banner announces itself, then gets out of the shopper's way. This is checkout, and nothing should linger. And the payoff, the real add to cart handler. applyCartLinesChange takes a typed payload type add cart line, the variant's merchandise ID, and a quantity of 1 and asks Checkout to apply it. Notice what this is not: it's not a fetch to some cart endpoint, and it's not mutating a cart object directly. It's a request, and Checkout can say no if the variant is out of stock. The result comes back with an error status, the tutorial flips that show error flag from the last scene, and the offer swaps to a different product. The UI around this uses Checkout's own component stack, heading, image, button, a skeleton loader, a banner for errors, the same component library part 12 toured. Previewing is one command, Shopify app dev, from the app root. Press P and the dev console opens with a preview link per extension. Click yours and a real checkout on your development store loads with the offer rendered in place, under the heading you might also like. The dev server rebuilds on every save. And the tutorial documents a real error you may hit. If the CLI complains that it requires the property token to be set, pass the checkout cart URL flag with a variant ID and quantity, and the CLI will construct the checkout session itself. If no checkout link appears at all, check that your dev store has products and that you're logged into the right organization. Shipping is the same deploy flow every extension in this series has used. Shopify App Deploy builds the extension bundle, uploads it, and creates an app version, a snapshot of your whole app configuration and all its extensions, then releases it, replacing the active version for every store with the app installed. Rollout takes a few minutes to reach everyone. And the flag worth memorizing, deploy with no dash release creates the version but holds it back, so you can stage a change and release it later, from the CLI or the dev dashboard, once you've verified it. The honest fine print. Checkout UI extensions render only on Shopify Plus stores built with that audience in mind from day one. Request the narrowest capability that works. API access covers Shopify's own data. Network access exists for when you genuinely need your own server. Treat the cart mutation as something that can fail politely. Out of stock comes back as an error result to handle, not an exception to catch, and swapping to the next offer is a good default. Remember that Tom edits need a dev server restart. That one costs people real debugging time. And the tutorial says it itself: querying the first 5 products is scaffolding. A production offer should come from real merchandising logic, not whatever happens to sort first. Pulling it together. One CLI template, checkout_UI, scaffolds the entire extension source file, locales, configuration, package manifest. The TOML file is where placement happens. It maps the checkout module to the purchase.checkout.block.render target, and it's where the API access capability gets declared. At runtime, everything flows through the Shopify global query to fetch products, lines to read the cart, I18N to format money, and applyCartLinesChange to actually mutate the order. Preview is one command against a real development store checkout, and deploy creates a version release you can stage or ship. That's a complete checkout UI extension, built entirely from Shopify's own tutorial source. That's a real pre-purchase offer running inside Shopify checkout scaffold, targeted, wired to the Storefront API, mutating the cart through the sanctioned surface, and deployed as a version release. Checkout isn't the only surface that works this way anymore. Part 14 moves to customer account UI extensions, the same extension model applied to Shopify's new accounts platform. If you're following the series, subscribe so it lands in your feed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 14.